It's time for the first ever segment of the Caden Kubler Top 5, where I'll be ranking my current top 5 NFL teams. Let's start us out here at number 5 with the Buffalo Bills. Now, they had a very close win on Sunday night against the Giants where their offense didn't look great, but their defense did a good job of not giving up a touchdown and keeping them in the game. I think the Bills' biggest problem right now is consistency, but when they play their brand of football, they're one of the most dangerous and lethal teams in the NFL. On the offensive side of the ball, everyone knows how explosive they are. Josh Allen is a top 3 MVP candidate right now. Stephon Diggs is having a monster season, and this Bills offense is the 3rd highest scoring offense in the NFL, putting up nearly 30 points per game. And let's not underappreciate what the Bills are doing on the defensive side of the ball as well. On the defensive line, they just added Von Miller back off his ACL tear from last season. Leonard Floyd is absolutely flying under the radar for this Bills team. He's already recorded 6.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble, and this defense truly kept them in the game against the Giants when this offense was failing to score. Right now, they're giving up less than 15 points per game, and that ranks the 3rd best in the NFL. Where I'm a little worried about this defense, and I talked about it a few weeks ago, is in their secondary. They had a few big injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and one of them was losing Tre'Davious White to a torn Achilles for the season. Second-year corner Khair Elam is now starting, and defenses have been targeting him all game long. When the Bills go up against some of the top gunslingers in the league, can this secondary hold up? Elite play callers and offensive masterminds like Andy Reid and Mike McDaniel will expose him in this secondary. They also lost a top 3 middle linebacker in the NFL, Matt Milano, to a broken leg, so I think that's also going to be a massive loss for this defense. But I'm not up here talking about the Bills as a team that I'm worried about. I have them as the 5th best team in the NFL. They have a top 5 offense, a top 10 defense, and they have a quarterback who can keep them in every ball game. That's a darn good recipe for winning. Let's move on to number 4. We have the Philadelphia Eagles. I had a segment last week on the show where I talked about the Eagles and 49ers as the top 2 teams in the NFC, and both of them suffered unexpected losses this week. For the Eagles, their offense looked absolutely abysmal. Jalen Hurts threw 3 interceptions, and this Jets defense had him absolutely bottled up. Now, I understand the Jets have a top 5 defense in the league, but the turnover problem for the Eagles is what killed them in the end. Now, I'm not panicking on this team either. I think the Jets on the road is a very tough matchup, and we're not going to see the Eagles have these types of turnover problems consistently in the future. This run game is looking like one of the best in the league. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown's connection this season might be a top 3 quarterback to wide receiver duo. We all know how good this Eagles defense was last season that helped propel them to the Super Bowl. This season, they haven't been as buckled up as they're giving up the 16th most points per game, but I'm not worried about that side of the ball at all. We all know the spectacular talent that they have, especially on the defensive line. And with the Eagles inserting a new offensive and defensive coordinator, there's going to be some hiccups along the way. So we're going to continue to see the offensive and defensive side of the ball become more cohesive. They have a huge game at home against the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football, which should be absolute fireworks. Coming in at number 3, the team that plays the Eagles on the road, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are playing at such a high level. Their only loss came to the Bills on the road. The Dolphins have the best offense in the league. Tua is top 5 in MVP voting. Tyreek Hill is on pace to break Calvin Johnson's single-season record for the most receiving yards. This run game looks unstoppable. Once they get A-Chain back, they'll be even more dangerous. They are currently putting up the most passing yards, most rushing yards, and most points per game in the NFL. This team is averaging 37 points per game. I mean, for goodness sakes, these are Madden stats that they're putting up. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, they haven't been great. They're currently giving up the 7th most points per game, but it's safe to say this defense is about to get some help. They're about to get Jalen Ramsey back, and this is going to be a huge spark not only for the secondary, but for the entire defense. The energy and the defensive leader that he'll be for this unit is absolutely huge, and if this Dolphins defense can step it up just a little bit, they should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Last week, early on, they struggled against the Panthers, giving up 14 first-quarter points, and it looked like they were about to get routed. This defense can't play around with some of the big offenses that they're about to face in the future. The Eagles this weekend, the Chiefs, Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills. We all saw what happened the last time they played the Bills. They gave up 48 points and got embarrassed. This defense is going to need to step it up big time, but for right now, the Miami Dolphins are the 3rd best team in the NFL. Let's hop right over to the 2nd best team in the league. I have the San Francisco 49ers. They also suffered their first loss of the season this past weekend, and there are currently no remaining unbeatens. But I'm not worried about this Niners squad. They went on the road in Cleveland and played a very stout and talented Browns defense. Not to mention Brock Purdy faced the most adversity he's ever faced in a regular season game, losing Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Now, I know the Niners lost to a backup quarterback in PJ Walker, and everybody wants to give Purdy flack because he didn't have a great game. But you look at that final drive where he led the Niners down the field, got them into field goal range, where they ultimately missed the kick. He looked absolutely phenomenal, and he was poised in the pocket. And I think that answers a lot of questions that we may have. If the 49ers find themselves in late game situations, can Brock Purdy make plays and be the quarterback that everyone's expecting him to be? I think he absolutely can, and that was a very telling drive. But I think the 49ers will be just fine after suffering their first loss of the season. Nobody should panic. This team is still the best team in the NFC and currently the second best team in the NFL. Last but not least, the team I believe is the best in the NFL, the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. After their Week 1 loss to the Lions, this team has won 5 straight games, and Mahomes continues to prove why he's the best player in the league, and he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. At the beginning of the season, a lot of people were concerned, myself included, about how dangerous this Chiefs offense could be with a very downgraded receiving core. We saw in their Week 1 loss, when they didn't have Kelsey, this receiving core had a ton of drops, and they struggled to move the ball up and down the field. Now with Kelsey back, this offense seems to be just fine, and this run game is also looking dynamic. The Chiefs are currently averaging the second most passing yards per game, so I think that puts to bed any questions or question marks surrounding this Chiefs passing game. Rashid Rice, the rookie wide receiver out of SMU, is having a huge season and seems to be Mahomes' new favorite target on the outside. Pacheco's running the ball at a very high level, and it gives a new element to this Chiefs offense that we haven't consistently seen the past few seasons. This defense is also quietly having a huge season, giving up the second fewest points per game. Now, the only caveat to having the Chiefs at number 1, for all the credit and props that I gave them, the last 4 weeks they've played some pretty easy opponents. Now, they played the Bears at home, the Jets on the road, which is a tougher game, Vikings on the road, which is an easy game, and then the Broncos at home. They have the Chargers next week, the Dolphins 2 weeks after that, followed up with the Eagles, and they'll still face the Bills, Bengals, and Chargers one more time. So I'm not questioning the legitimacy of this defense, but we'll see how it holds up against some of these tougher offenses. It seems like every year the Chiefs have some sort of problem on their team, whether that's last year losing Tyreek Hill and having a very young and inexperienced defense. People were questioning how explosive this offense could be and if their defense was good enough to hang around these great offenses. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl attributing to Mahomes' greatness. This year, the same question marks were still brought up. How elite and explosive could this offense be, especially with all the drops that they suffered in Week 1? And they've currently won 5 straight games, and in my opinion, they are the best team in the NFL. And the reason I put them above the Niners and these other 5-1 teams is because of number 15, and you can never count that man out. I'm Caden Kubler, and that's my take.